Hello everyone, and welcome to today's live Zoo to You. My name is Katie and I'm an educator here at Stone Zoo, and today we're getting a little kooky as we're here with our Kookaburra, Laffy Taffy. He is 5 years old, and Kookaburras live an average of 15 years, sometimes even up until they are 30 years old. And he lives right across from our Animal Discovery Center and our Jaguar exhibit here at Stone Zoo. Laffy Taffy is a laughing kookaburra, and there are actually 4 different types of kookaburras, which not many people know. Laughing kookaburras are the largest subspecies, but there are also blue-winged kookaburras, spangled kookaburras, and rufous-bellied kookaburras. This subspecies is found throughout the eastern coast of Australia, and they have also been introduced into the southwestern portion of Australia as well. They live primarily in forested habitats, but they are really well adapted to many different environments. And some kookaburras that are not shy will even take food from people or sometimes approach people for some snacks as well. One question we get pretty frequently about our kookaburra here at Stone Zoo is, what does he eat? And it might be surprising to you to find out that he is primarily carnivorous. So here at the zoo, he's fed our feline diet, our carnivore diet, which is ground meat, but he's also fed rodents as well. That's part of his daily diet, but as special treats, he likes to snack on crickets, mealworms, and even some fish and hard-boiled eggs. What's really interesting about kookaburras is they don't have sharp talons or a curved beak for eating their prey and ripping their prey apart. So instead, they have another really cool, really interesting adaptation. They'll actually take that prey item. So with Laffy Taffy, we just saw him do this with one of his mice that he's fed. And they take it in their beak and they will slam it right against a rock or a branch. Kookaburras have also been observed feeding on snakes and dropping them from really, really high up and breaking apart that prey item so it's easier for them to ingest, which I think is a really cool way to feed and something that you wouldn't really suspect while looking at a really cute little fluffy bird, that they're actually a pretty vicious carnivore. And while you're watching, if you have any kookaburra questions, please feel free to ask them in the chat and I'll do my best to answer them. So kookaburras are a type of bird in the kingfisher family. So kingfishers do live all over the world, but this type of kingfisher is only going to be living in Australia. In their natural range, they'll be eating rodents, snakes, like I mentioned. They'll also be eating insects, fish, and crayfish as well. They are found primarily near land instead of water, which is pretty typical of other kingfishers. They're normally found near water. So this is a really cool adaptation that they're kind of more of a forest dwelling species. And probably the most well-known thing about kookaburras is their call. So if you've come to Stone Zoo, you might have actually even heard him with his call, and that is a territorial message. They are sending that out to other animals in the area, to other kookaburras in the area to help establish their range and their territory. They are known as the Bushman's clock in Australia because of how loud that call is, and it's typically heard in the early morning. If you've also watched, movies that take place in Australia or even jungle scenes, that Kookaburra call is pretty frequently dubbed to make things seem very wild, kind of like you're in a very, cool jungle. Sometimes it's even used to sound like a monkey's call, so they'll kind of modify it a little bit so it sounds a little bit like a monkey, but that's actually just the Kookaburra's call. And that's how they get that name, Laughing Kookaburra, because it does sound a little bit like they're laughing when they do make that call. But again, that's to establish their territory and their range, not because another Kookaburra just told a really, really funny joke. And have we had any questions come in that I could answer about Kookaburras?
We have had a few. So Christina was wondering, why are their beaks so long?
Oh, that's a good question. That's a common adaptation with kingfishers. I'm assuming just to help them reach prey items. Maybe even, this would be my guess, but it might help them reach things like insects that might be burrowing into a tree. But you'll also notice that it's very straight instead of curved for ripping apart meat, which is typical with other birds of prey.
Lexi was wondering, how often are they fed?
They are fed here at the zoo once a day. So Laffy Taffy is typically fed midday. So if you do come to the zoo at that time, you might even see him snacking on some mice or some meat.
And if you mimic the calls, will they call back?
Oh, that's a good question. So like I mentioned, it is a territorial noise. So I wouldn't want to make that call because I wouldn't want Laffy Taffy to feel like there was maybe another Kookaburra in his range. I do believe that sometimes Kookaburras will make that call back, but he has not done that for any of us here at the zoo.
And did you say if they're endangered?
That's a good question. They are not an endangered species. They are what's called a species of least concern, meaning that they are not in imminent threat of becoming endangered or extinct. However, as we're learning, and as we saw in the beginning of 2020, as our planet warms and as Australia warms, we're seeing more and more devastating fires go through the area. So one thing that you can do to help kookaburras and other animals that live in those drier environments is to cut down on your carbon emissions and to help reduce your greenhouse gases. And that's going to help animals just like a kookaburra.
All the time we have, so we want to wrap up.
All right, well, thank you all so much for joining us today for today's live Zoo to You with Laffy Taffy the Kookaburra. We hope you tune in next time for our next live video. Bye.